and welcome. I'm Nancy Messina, and I want to welcome you to our event, Creating Collaborative OER Materials, a Faculty and Alumni Perspective. We want to thank you so much for coming. If you are not part of the OER Certificate Program and you would like to be, please email me. I'm Nancy Messina it's nmessina@lindenwood.edu. I wanted to let you know the event is being recorded, so if something happens, you can watch it later. Feel free to add questions to the chat as they come to you, but we will ask the panel all the questions at the end. So let's get this conversation started.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy, for having us and for letting us share a little bit about the experiences that we've shared together over the past few years. So I'm really excited to introduce 3 of our LU alumni and to kind of facilitate just a short discussion about how our involvement in OER collaboration and creation has gone for us as students and faculty, and also just kind of lifelong learners. So during our discussion, I hope you will consider how encouraging student and faculty collaboration could benefit you, your students, their careers. And then we also want to just give a little bit of an overview of the different types of collaboration that are out there, and kind of, if you're not ready to take that big leap into, I'm going to make an OEP OER course, what else could I do to kind of reap some of these benefits? So I hope that's what you guys get out of this presentation. I also just hope you get to enjoy the passion and excitement that some of our LU alumni have for this topic and are willing to share with us. So before we start our good part of our discussion, I do want to give a little information about my role at LU and just my passion for OER, and then I'll let our panelists introduce themselves too. So I am the program lead for our Behavior Analysis Master's Degree Program in the College of Ed and Human Services. When I started here, I was kind of tasked with identifying ways to just take our program to the next level or kind of improve it in terms of real world impact. And I remember one of the first faculty meetings that I got to attend was one where Dr. Shuffler introduced this idea that I'd never heard about as a clinician. So as a mental health practitioner or a therapist, I had never heard of this, but it was this idea of OER. And I was like, wow, this is really exciting. This could be really disrupting to higher ed and really new and exciting. So as I started to look at that research about the movement and what it means for what my students do, I realized it really could be a game changer in the way that fields break through kind of traditional barriers to entry, and a way to make higher ed more inclusive and representative and encouraging to students that might have a non-traditional background. So I'm also very passionate just in general about coursework being not a check the box, I got my degree type of paradigm. So I really want my students to feel like the work that they're doing makes them better professionals and gives them something they can take out into the community and really use. And to me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what OER really could do. And I am really grateful that that inspiration came to me early in my career in higher ed, because I've really gotten to see that pay off. And when I say pay off, I really mean I've gotten to see the benefits it's had for our students. So I think that's a nice transition, hopefully, for Clint and Lauren to introduce themselves and kind of tell us a little bit about their experience as an LU student and what role collaboration in OER creation took for their experience as students. So if y'all wouldn't mind, could you give us a little background about how you got here and why you were willing to do this for us?
Sure, I'll go first. My name's Lauren. Oh my gosh, when did I graduate, Maggie? Was it 2019? Okay, it was 2019. It's 2019. And I had like the absolute joy of having Maggie as both my mentor for my thesis, and also I believe it was behavior change, a behavior change course. And so I just felt like my time at Lindenwood was just an immensely beautiful experience, because I was coming from an undergrad in Latin and Greek, and then I got a master's in early childhood, and then I was like, I want to understand the science of behaviors. And so I went to Lindenwood for that program. At the time, there was a educational specialist sector of the program. And initially I felt so kind of like lost, but then, I met Maggie and other professors who just really showed me the beauty of collaboration, and that when we rely on each other and we rely on the community, within Lindenwood, within the program, we can truly learn new things. And so when I took Maggie's thesis program, I wrote my thesis on eating disorders and behavior analysis. And something that Maggie and I often talked about is that, currently there's minimal research on eating disorders in terms of like anorexia and bulimia and those types of eating disorders within the behavior analytic literature. So Maggie had to help me kind of like navigate different journals and different book resources, but there was nothing particularly in the field of ABA. And so when we graduated and Maggie was working with us to put together the OER book, I just realized how useful materials and books and resources like this are, because it truly allows students from, weird and random backgrounds like Latin and Greek to learn something new and begin to develop that competency and that proficiency and that mastery of a brand new subject, without the gatekeeping of, hundreds of dollars of scholarly journal articles or textbooks and resources. So I hope that answers your question, Maggie. But that was kind of my experience.
So Lauren, one of the things that aligned with our goals here of just highlighting the collaboration piece of OER creation that I just want to call you out on is Lauren was one of the first students who was really willing to enter this kind of adventure with me. The thesis project has been a capstone of our program for quite a while, but the idea that we could do something where the work that she's putting into it could also go maybe do something else was one of the first big light bulb moments for me, because Lauren's passion, she shared, is in a niche way. She's got lots of passions. She's a really great professional. But one of the things she's really passionate about is something that there's not a lot of research on. And there's certainly not any curated kind of one source or primary way to go find the information that those things, that is out there. So with her project, it was so cool to see all of this research that she was doing anyway, come together in a way where I've been able to go and refer other students to her work. I've got a lot of students who are working in early intervention, have folks that come through with feeding issues, or, I've got students who work in schools, and they're just interested in how does this play into how they provide good services for their classrooms. And I'm able to give this resource now that literally did not exist. And I hope, Lauren, that one of the things that you and I get something out of it, hopefully you do too, is it's really fun as a professor to be able to kind of reel her into that piece. Like, it's really fun to see your own work go out and do good stuff. But I didn't know how rewarding it would be to be able to like send an email to an alumni and be like, Lauren, like someone in South Africa just used your book to do a feeding program. Like, that's so cool. And I think that's helped me at least, keep connected in a field where sometimes it might feel like as faculty, we kind of just put a lot of work in and then we don't know what's going to happen next. Like, I love the idea that this has given me a way to keep in touch with my students and to continue to give them some positive feedback on the hard work that we made them do, right? They're going to do it. So, lots of opportunities to kind of reel you back in. So that's been really cool for me. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Clint, I'm like, you follow that up.
Yeah, that's a hard walk off to. It's like bases loaded in the ninth, and I'm still up to hit. There's really not much else to add to the scoreboard there. But you've
done some cool stuff too. Tell us about it.
We've done some cool stuff. While I was at Lindenwood, I kind of backdoored my way into this ABA thing, sort of like how Lauren talked about, where I have an undergraduate in theology and psychology. And then I backed into the science of behavior, where it's this really cool little niche corner of psychology and science, which isn't something that you see a lot. It's usually very heavy on one or the other. It's either a science or it's a psychology, but the psychological science of behavior sounds cool, doesn't really roll off the tongue. And so, but when I jumped in, and my story is very similar to Lauren's, I graduated in 2018. And during the capstone project is when Maggie and I first met. And it was definitely, she brought a lot of energy to the classroom, as most of you know, if you've ever talked with Maggie for about 3 seconds. There's a lot of energy that's brought, but it's driven by a passion, and it's very contagious, and it's really cool to be a part of. And when, as a student, I first saw a light at the end of the tunnel, and then I saw a roadblock in the form of a 40-page paper known as a thesis. And I was like, oh, cool. Let's go through and look at something that I'm interested in. And ABA has these little niche corners where, there's a lot of thought dumped into a specific part. And I like to look at what's there in absence. So I look at the whole picture and see where there are things that we could fill in, right? Some of the white spaces, so to speak. And one of the spaces that I found was preference assessments. And in our academic jargon, it's essentially like, hey, is the thing that you like actually doing something to change behavior? And, I dove into the topic and started finding that, in the field of behavior change, we really hadn't been looking at preference for people for like the first 25 years of the existence of the science. And so we were just guessing like, yeah, this probably works. The kid says they like the teddy bear, but do they? I mean, we're just going to go off their words. How can we quantify it? And so I really got into that, and we did the OER thing. And while I was at Lindenwood, I guess it would have been a year after Lindenwood. So I went to ABAI in Chicago, and Maggie and I linked up for a panel discussion on
Clint, they're not behavior analysts. You have to talk it out.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what ABAI is.
Yep, my apologies.
We jargon all the things.
What group? My apologies. So we went to the big international conference for ABA. It's happens. It's like where everybody comes to present something of worth, to the community. A lot of the big stuff is revealed there. And so we go, and there's the very small section of people that are excited about open educational resources within the field of ABA. And so I get into the idea there. And as Maggie's a common thread through this whole conversation, because then I also got pulled into, and I'm a board member of the Open Educational Resources Special Interest Group for our field. And so we do a lot of work with OER as well within the field of ABA, specific to that inclusion piece for, lesser privileged individuals, as far as, buying books and things like that. And that's kind of where this idea came from, from Maggie, us getting to share this with others, and to hear that our work has gotten to be used in, other countries and parts of the country. And now it's a staple in some people's curricula. It's just really cool to see. But I think that spirit is kind of what stuck with me so if you see my little name there, I don't identify as BCBA most of the time. Again, the entrepreneurial side of me likes to put myself out there as behavior chef. And as I was going through this at Lindenwood, I was kind of going through my own things, my own behavior change journey. And when I got out in 2019, I created a space for, basically, if I'm honest with you, I was creating ABA memes while I was studying for the exam, and started applying those similarly to Lauren's content, as far as eating and eating related behaviors, because that part is not a big part of our science yet, and it needs to be. Behavior change isn't just specific to those that have underprivileged needs. Every human being has behavior. I'm not going to go on that tangent because I could, but
that's another CE, Clint. That's another CE.
Right. What sparked out of that, is we have a decent social media presence within our little field, and I co-host a podcast with another BCBA that we discuss. We're also nutrition coaches. We're certified coaches in just basic nutrition, but we've taken the certification of our BCBA, our board certified behavior analysis or behavior analyst certification, and applied that to how it works with nutrition, and diving into the research that's not, if you go through and look, to Lauren's point, we're creating something right now for for the masses really, but it's heavily analytic. And going through our analytic research, there's not a lot as far as anything outside of feeding protocols and things like that are very specific to behavior change in the way that we use it. And so scouring other journals and finding, ideas of nutrition and, what's the typical success rate of dieting and what's all of these things come into play when in the spirit of OER exists and within our podcast, because our philosophy as, even though we are a company, we do have some for-profit things that we do. You got to make money sometimes to continue doing the things you want to do. I don't have grants everywhere, which I need to freelance Maggie out as my grant writer. But what we do have is this incredible platform that we've been able to reach literally thousands and thousands of people to share with them everything that we do with clients one-on-one. We give all those concepts away on our podcast, because at the end of the day, our entire gimmick, if you will, our entire thing is helping people. I stole this tagline from a podcast guest that I had. Dr. Stephen Hayes created acceptance and commitment therapy with a bunch of other folks, but he just always says, I just want to be helpful to you. And that's kind of been a driving force for us. And that's something that sits behind the concept of open educational resources, that we're taking the things that we've been privileged enough to purchase and pay for and put time and equity into. And I think that's one great definition of equity, is when we've purchased the right to equity or the ability to have equity, that we give that ability of equity to others that may not have the same opportunities. And so that's...
And Clint, I love that. It reminds me, do you remember when we did, you remember the OER panel hosted, or the OER SIG? So we actually, as a group of alumni and students and some other faculty members from other universities, created a special interest group of our international accrediting body. And that's what Clint mentioned. He's a board member of. We actually have come together as a community to create more OER, collaborating not just within our university, but with everybody who's doing similar work. So he's been influential in that. But the other thing that I think is really cool is when we did this panel a couple of years ago, we got a lot of folks coming in, kind of like this panel, where like you came in because it's kind of an interesting topic, but you weren't necessarily like, this isn't your jam, right? You don't just like do this every day. And Clint gave this nice kind of idea of OER as a way to introduce additional representation and to open up education to folks that might not get that representation. And we actually had someone come in and who's pretty high up in our accrediting body and say, oh my gosh, I had never thought about how this establishes new values and how those values then carry on throughout a career. And I mean, this is someone who has 50 years in our field, like was at the original cohort in UNLV for us nerds over here that know what that is. But someone coming in and saying, oh, like this is not just a one-time creation collaboration. This also creates values that students take into their long-lasting careers and make new stuff. So Lauren, has created some really awesome graphics and beautiful art pieces that in our field promote mindfulness and the science behind being a balanced practitioner in our field as OER after she graduated, like just because that's a value she has and she wants to, like Clint said, do better and help people. Clint's got this podcast going, which talk about circular or exponential benefits. He's an alumni who went out and created this OER podcast, and now I use episodes from the OER podcast in my coursework and assign it out for folks to listen to and respond to, because it's good science and now it's out there without a barrier to access. So got to brag on them a little bit. Like I feel very strongly that the experience, both from a professor and a student perspective, of creating something together that then goes and benefits a lot of other folks is something that establishes almost like a career norm. I know some of the folks that have come into our program as evaluators have been like, why are you so into this? Why are you so into OER? I'm like, look what it's done. This is now just a core value for me. And I'm really excited to share it with folks and to have them go on and see what they can do. So both of you have done really excellent work, and it's exciting. It's exciting. Can I introduce our last panelist who's able to come and join us real quick, Nancy? Leah, is that okay? All right. Kodi is the owner of the coolest cat I know, and also an alumni who has done some very cool stuff related to advocacy for clients, and was also, I'd love if you would talk a little bit about your actual chapter in the book, because I think if we talk about an area where OER doesn't exist and where the benefits of OER could really be seen, I think your chapter really brings a lot. I know you're still working on it, which I also want to talk about, which is also a cool part of OER, right? Because we can keep working on it and keep revising and make it more relevant and keep going. But tell us a little bit about you, kind of what open access or OER means to you, and what you've done since you've created our cool chapter.
Since running from St. Charles, yes. And we can, yes. So here is the coolest cat. This is Lizard. She's adorable. Oh, hello. Never too far away. But yes, so my passion really, once I got into behavior analysis, my passion then kind of came down to like ethics and client advocacy, and essentially my biggest undertaking, as Maggie likes to call it and point out, that I want to change the world. And I am one of those people who my dreams always are bigger than what could feasibly probably be accomplished in a lifetime. But that doesn't stop me from trying. And so honestly, my biggest number one passion has always kind of been bringing awareness to our internal biases. And so when we talk about internal biases, we then start discussing in the field of behavior analysis, we refer to that as our like learning history. And so how our experiences of the past shape who we are today, and how that affects how we go about and then make an impact in the world. I suddenly just lost my train of thought. Was there anything else that you would ask me another question, Maggie?
So tell me, Kodi.
Yes.
You said that there's not a lot of representation in our field.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah. And so kind of going off of like our learning history and our experiences, if there isn't diversity and representation in experiences, then we can't truly act in an unbiased manner. We can get all of the training and know all the right things to do and say, but doing things in a training never truly 100% translates, that 1 hour that you'd spent at a conference and you learned about a thing, how does that actually translate to a practice? Because unfortunately, we're beings of habit. Our experiences through our lives absolutely are going to reflect into the way that we act in the world. And so actually involving diverse experiences and having those be a voice of change and reason, having diverse identities, ethnicities, all of the rigmarole will actually lead to that change and that progress. And then you'll have somebody there to also kind of catch you. Because I absolutely, and I think the biggest takeaway from my chapter that I continue to chug away on is kind of that no matter what our personal experiences are, they come from a place of bias. Everybody's biased, and bias isn't a bad thing. It's us confronting our bias and challenging ourselves and progressing through those things.
So Cody's chapter in our book, maybe a little bit of background. Again, sorry, Kodi. None of these people are behavior analysts. So sometimes I have to like interpret our internal community for the external community. But that's really what our chapter is about here. And I think one of the things that was so inspirational about Cody's work was this idea that the work that they do for their clients all has to do with advocacy for folks that are not represented well by the instructional or the learning materials that are out there right now. Just on a personal note, and those of you that have been doing the certificate, I think that in a lot of fields, a lot of the informational materials that we have are written from folks in privilege, or who have had at least the privilege of going to college, which I know a lot of, we're all in a university setting, so we may forget that that is a humongous benefit and privilege to our lives. And so to attack a textbook chapter that represents the issues that are faced by folks who do not identify as binary, or who do not identify as cisgender, and to do it in a way that's both scholarly and breaking barriers, because it's not already out there. But I'm not just saying like go accumulate the things that are already out there and produce them so that other folks can get them. Not to discount folks that do that. That's great OER collaboration too. But Cody's project really created something that did not exist at all, which is where our field has been, and also where we need to progress. One of the things I love about OER creation is that Codys Chapter didn't have to wait years and years and years to be out there. The information that was presented in it was relevant, timely, and it was able to be distributed
3, 2, 1, 0, 8.
Kind of outside of those traditional barriers, where by the time it got out there, maybe it would have been more neutral, or it would have been kind of a little more reactive. This was responsive and positive and strong, and it was really cool. And then I think that you also kind of brought up another interesting point, which was, where do we get our information? What does that look like as a student? So one of the things as a constant lifelong learner, in my field and in other fields, I think when we look up to get new information, a lot of times that provider of the resource is not someone that necessarily the learner can identify with, or not someone that I could see myself in that position. And maybe Kodi, Clint, Lauren, did you guys ever have that experience as a student of feeling like the information that you read or consumed was not like you? Is that something that any of you have experienced?
I've honestly, like the most recent experience I had, I participated on, I know Clint kind of introduced IBAO, so that's our big governing body, and they invited me to participate on the statement that they just recently released about conversion therapy, and not participating in conversion therapy as behavior analysts. And I was very honored to participate on that statement. But I was one of the very few, maybe the only person who works in the field currently as a behavior analyst. And all of those people were speaking from a side of academics. And they were trying to define, what do we consider conversion therapy? What do we consider this? What do we consider that? When I can get into
when you're out there doing it,
yeah,
you see it. You see what it is in the real world. So your perspective on that, I think, almost has a value that is unparalleled.
And so like kind of like
looking at just
setting
research
those boundaries.
versus someone who's in it.
Right. Yeah, and like trying to set boundaries of like what people do versus what we define it as is so subjective. And so just seeing the difference between, we can write papers all day and we can go do one experiment and say like, well, I did this experiment one day and this is how it went. But that is not absolutely replicatable for each instance. There are so many variables that you have in a controlled environment that person's not going to have. And so understanding that is always going to be a limitation that academics have compared to people that are out there doing a thing or currently experiencing a thing. I think that's a bias that we can still challenge, but that's definitely a bias that I think.
And I think OER is a great way to challenge it, because OER gives us, especially the collaboration, so it's guided. Mm-hmm. We can say a lot about content that's just put out there open access. And I think a lot of us as professors are like very uneasy with the idea that there could be things out there that we use as instructional materials that have not gone through the traditional peer review process. But as we go through this collaboration, and as this collaboration has evolved, what I've learned is when we have content creators, and Kodi, I know you'll let me call you out a little bit on this. When we have content creators that have this unique perspective and a very curated sound background of scholarly information, if we can encourage the sharing of that, it not only fills a deficit in our fields or fills a knowledge gap, but it also comes from someone with authority. And when I say authority, I don't mean academic authority. I mean someone who's out there, boots on the ground, doing it. So if I then say to my students who are not graduates, not at the professional level that Cody's at, hey, this chapter gives you really solid information about something that's hard to find. And it's by someone who's out there actually doing it. What I've seen is that introduces additional collaboration. That makes folks more excited to learn from that resource. It makes them more excited to have the idea that, oh, well, if I have a really strong opinion and I'm willing to go do the hard work, and I've got the support from someone who can open some doors for me, which I feel like is our role as faculty, I could go kind of ripple effect change. And that's been something that your project especially has opened up for me is the idea that it's not traditional authorship, about an idea that maybe traditional authorship doesn't have good contact with. The research is there and you used it to create your chapter, but you're also inspiring other students to go do something new and to have a voice in a field that traditionally has been pretty dominated by one specific demographic. And hopefully that's not, as a university, I hope that's not everywhere, but in our field, we're very new. We're talking 100 years of history. So even our scholarly field is quite dominated by, cisgendered doctoral level writers. And so having some other voices and faces out there, I think is awesome when it comes to our students getting excited, not just learning, but getting excited about learning, and then going on and doing the kind of things that Kodi and Clint and Lauren are doing and taking it to the next level, taking those values and helping folks with the knowledge and the skills that they've gained out in the real world, and being willing to do it, just like you guys said, just to help other folks.
I found
I get
that,
really excited.
so sorry. Kodi gave me a really great idea with your passion there about the idea of open educational resources. And when I think of open, and there are a lot of really cool words we use nowadays about equity, agency, inclusion, and they're just as much as anything else we can say, they run the risk of becoming buzzwords if they're not connected to experience. And so one of the things that I love about the open part of educational resources is Maggie was talking about that guided part, where open really opens the door essentially from just academia and you could think of, most of you would know, like Skinner's, the rat box or the operant chambers, those kind of things. Like that's in psychology in general, those are fairly well known, not just our corners, but those are definitely lab enacted and created things. And now we're not working with rats. We're working with human beings with thoughts, emotions, feelings, and they're all different types and archetypes of people. And so I really like the idea that we have here, to not be afraid of the idea of open educational resources in comparison to tradition, where it's guided by the tradition, but it's boots on the ground outside of a laboratory, which in my experience so far as a practitioner, I feel that is, if I can replicate a study outside of a whitewashed room, I feel like there's way more agency to that study. And I kind of feel sometimes like the traditional route that we have is sort of akin to like starting a job and getting the book where you're doing the OJT, right? You're getting the on-the-job training. And like, I remember being a CNA in high school. I got certified as a CNA in high school. And there was like a 12-step task analysis of sorts to do hand washing. And it was like 30 seconds here, 30 seconds here. And then I see like the vetted, mama bear of all the people that everybody goes to for questions. And she washes her hands for 15 seconds. And I'm like, okay, so the transition from the course material to the application isn't necessarily the same thing all the time, right? We're not replicating. She's not pulling out a sheet to do 12 steps. She's memorized how to do hand washing in her way. And so it's really neat to see the idea of the traditional role of education being married and put together with the the practitioner role, where we're able to see why is this a good and a bad thing? Because this is the report from the field versus this is what our research says. And they shouldn't be at odds. They should actually commingle very well. And I come from a place myself of, you talked about this privilege, did we recognize that privilege in ourselves? I sit as, I kind of resemble the privilege. I'm a white cisgendered straight man who has a master's degree. Now, looking at me now, you could put those labels on me, but I grew up below the poverty line with parents who didn't graduate high school. And I had, at the time, I didn't have what I would consider privilege, even though I know we can get into all the other ideas of what privilege means. But as far as educationally is concerned, I didn't expect to graduate high school and go into college. And then when I went into college, I didn't expect to go get a master's degree. And now there's a significant amount of debt behind all those things for me now. But now that I've gotten to a place where my natural state of being the cisgendered white guy with a master's degree and a podcast and a certification, now that gives me some vision of privilege to be able to use that. Even though my learning history doesn't come from that traditional role of privilege, I sit in a spot where I can use that light now that people see to shine away from the academia and funnel academia into, like Cody's talking about, boots on the ground stuff. So it's really cool. I was very long-winded. I apologize, but all that to say, it's really cool to see the connection of OER and it becoming more and more talked about. This is a really cool panel to discuss with people that have the ability to enact change. Because when we get OER is not just a term, it's trying to actualize the things that we talk about from academia, the changing tides that we're trying to say, we're trying to do it. And so, if some can come on board and join with that, that's the really cool part. It's like you get to be a part of not just research, but literally changing the tide of how academia is viewed and rolled out and applied.
So BCBAs, let's talk response efforts. So if faculty are so excited about this that they are ready to just create an entire course collaborating with students on creating new OER in their field, that's one option, right? That's the option that y'all accidentally had to take because that was my choice. But since then, we've seen again, you guys have been my inspiration. We've had a lot of different iterations of what that looks like in the program and what that collaboration looks like. And some of you have taken those things too. So, we've done everything from an entire, we have a master's course now that focuses on collaboration with behavior analysis students and a faculty member. It has been a couple different projects, right? We've created a textbook. We've created some chapters, and now our next 2 years of students are working on a grant-funded project to create instructional modules for undergraduate students in an open access kind of modality. We've had students go off and create podcasts. Clint is awesome. Even if you're not a BCBA, go check it out, The Behavior Chef. It's just a fun thing to listen to, and we all eat and we all behave. So it's great. We've got podcasts. We've got Lauren doing graphics. We've got Kodi doing advocacy and a continually revising and editing a chapter that continues to be relevant and used as materials for folks who are doing that type of work. We have a faculty member who has a viral TikTok page. I can't do it. I tried. I can't. Learning curve's too high for me. But again, she's taking really solid principles from something like you guys are saying of academic privilege or learning and disseminating it in a way in 30-second bites that gets our science out there to folks who may not have the privilege of going to a traditional higher ed institution. So, we also have a class this semester who are creating their own dissemination videos. So they can do it. I guess some of them will do TikTok. Gosh, I don't know how to grade a TikTok, but there's OER product rubrics out there to help me. So I can do that if it has to happen, but they're creating these more small pieces that I think are really exciting. We've got a class, our philosophy class now relies completely on open educational resources that were created either by our community members that are collaborating with us. So we do videos with our community partners that we do fieldwork at. We've collaborated with them to create some real world training videos that are representative of what really happens out there that you might not see in the book. And I think all of those things are opportunities as faculty for us to think about reframing a traditional assignment in a way that might be not just more valuable for our community, because I'm real passionate about that, but more valuable for our students. And yeah, Lauren.
I have a question or a thought.
Yeah.
Help me think about all this. Something that I also think about with the collaboration piece. So Kodi was the first person I met in the program orientation. They sat next to me. It was just a beautiful moment. But something that I think that is not necessarily thought about all the time is the level of burnout we feel within our own little niche and field, the way we feel as professionals in general, the way our world is right now. Every place you go to, there's shortages. I mean, the level of just exhaustion and anxiety that is present right now, but definitely present when you are starting a brand new degree program or a brand new like adventure into the field. And so part of what I really love about collaboration, and to kind of go back to what you were saying, Maggie, about like the response effort, the thing that would fuel me is just the idea that I'm not alone, that it's not an all or nothing thing. I'm not, reading scholarship and, I'm not within that scholarship, I'm not able to identify with this person. So then I think, oh shoot, well, I can't do this, right? Or I can't do this degree program, or this is just not for me. When we have OER and we see all of the different ways that we can make this difference, we're also seeing ourselves in so many different ways. And we have people who can support us on those burnout days, because they happen and they're horrible. But, you have somebody on your team and you can be like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point? What is the mission behind this? And then that collaboration allows you to keep going. So I think that is something that was just really powerful about Lindenwood's program, but also doing the OER. Like, I did not feel alone. And that is just something that is, I think, important right now, but, across fields.
Yeah. And I think that's for a lot of us are faculty here, I think that's a lovely benefit for us as faculty too. One, our students don't feel alone. I've moved our OER class, our project class, sorry, y'all had to do it solo with me. But now we have writing circles or writing teams that work together, and that just increases that collaboration and that idea that we have a bigger mission beyond making a paper and graduating. We have a bigger mission, and we also get the benefit of a team that's going to support us and that got through this experience with us. Those of you that know me, my husband's a Marine, so I relate a lot of things to like boot camp and like those type of things. Like, we got through it together, so now we're stronger together, and we'll probably maintain those relationships for much longer than that one particular experience. And I think that's, again, one of the reasons why I am so grateful that Lindenwood inspired me to get into this, and also that I've really enjoyed working with students like Clint and Lauren and Kodi. It's just the idea that we are better together and we're stronger together, and we can make a better impact, be more representative and inclusive. All right. Free write sprint time. Another thing we do in class. Sorry.
Oh, no.
One takeaway, each of you, that you would give to a faculty member that's considering something like this. What is one thing that you would want them to think about that might influence them for or against, right? A barrier or a benefit. But what's a piece of advice as folks that have gone through this that you'd give to someone who wanted to include folks like you?
It actually comes from what you just, oh, sorry, Kodi, you go ahead.
Oh, sure thing. Yeah. Honestly, Ed and Maggie can absolutely attest to my undiagnosed ADHD and autism at the time. I am a non-believer in deadlines. And have faith in your people that they are doing it. And I think the best thing that has ever helped me through undergrad and graduate school is make your prompts or your rubrics slightly flexible and leave room for passion projects. Because I have absolutely made all of my best work ever as a passion project. I'll follow like the core rubrics and the core things that you need to see, but how many times do you truly want to read a paper about the same thing? Like if you can get an amazing paper that still is speaking on that topic and that subject and you're getting all of that done, because honestly, especially at the time, I think we graduated in like 2018, 2019, my paper was very firmly almost against behavior analysis. Honestly, my entire paper was kind of like, this is all wrong. This is how we can do it better. The end. Now there's a lot more discussion in our field about
but now you're
how
coming
we can
back.
do these things. Yeah.
You're like, this is what the research said we should have done better. And now every year we get to go back and add to it and say, this is what we found to do better. And it can continue to be this awesome thing. I also think, sorry, nope, I'm going to cut myself off. I could brag on all my students for hours and hours and hours. So please don't let me. Thank you so much.
No, but that's all. So like just kind of, and I had Maggie's support that even though I was kind of coming out with this paper that was kind of challenging everything that I had learned in the past 2 years, Maggie was like, great, you can probably make it stronger if you use some of these resources. Try this resource. Have you read this? And that was all of the input that Maggie truly gave me instead of being like arguing her own maybe opinions or points on that topic. And so I really appreciated that.
Cool. And I didn't tell them to say that. So cool, cool opportunity too, to just highlight, like, it is a way for those of us that work in fields that do have opinions, right? We're science, but we also have opinions and we're reacting to a changing world, a dynamic new way of existing. So, having a resource out there that a student and a faculty member can continue to revise and redefine and distribute, I think is such a cool, so much more than being able to say like, oh, I helped you get your diploma. Congrats. There's your hat. Bye-bye. It's really awesome. So thanks, Kodi. Lauren, Clint, you guys got anything else you could add for us faculty that are thinking about this might be a good idea, but?
Yeah, actually it comes from you, Maggie. So we just love you. In our thesis class, Maggie was also helping us kind of grapple with like organizational behavior management. So the more corporate business side of things. And that was very scary, and something for me, and something that Maggie said to me was just try. And so that has been something that I have taken with me every single day when I try something new, or when I'm in the middle of something that's really hard. And I think that that's a really beautiful, short little thing to just try and get, seek help and seek resources and give it a go, honestly.
And you're right. That's one of the things I love about it too, is it's my chance for me, I mean, most of my students that are in the project course, or what you guys had as the thesis course, right? Like they're about to go out and be professionals in the world. We've given you all the tools that we can as teachers and mentors, like you're ready. But something like an OER project or the creation of something that is professional and out there in the field, I feel like potentially, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that might have a little bit more confidence boost than just being able to say, I passed my final exam in that class, right? I didn't just pass my exam. Like, I love being able to show them, like, you're just as good. You've got the skills, you're competent, you've already shown it. So now go share that with folks. Like, just try, just show them what you know. And we've had some students get some pretty high recognition from folks in the field that are like, wow, that was really insightful. And they're using the sources that were references for their OER project, that are coming back and saying this was really cool. So yeah, it's exciting as a professor to be able to say that and to watch what you guys do. Clint gets closing words.
Strap in, everyone. I building off the cases that the other two have made, you said something earlier, Maggie, that made me think about this question as you asked it. And you said, sorry to those of you that were, the initial groups, you guys had to write this alone. And now we have these groups. The really cool thing about OERs is they're evolutionary. And so you start with this great idea and this foundation, and then you just build the building on top of it, and you get to add the scaffolding and build some more. And so it's not once it's published, it's not done, right? Once it's published, it's out. And so then it evolves. And one thing that I like, it connects to one of Lindenwood's taglines. Mitch, you have it as your background there: real experience, real success. And so the OER part comes from the academia, where it connects to the experience of those in the field, leading to real-time success and change. And I'll give you the smallest example of that from my time doing stupid social media stuff. Last year, some of us BCBAs that have some social media poll got together and did the ABCs of ABA. And we created a hashtag on Instagram where every day from each perspective, we would do whatever letter we would talk about a component of behavior analysis. Of course, ours is about nutrition and applying these concepts to your daily nutritional routine. And so we did this a year ago. Just a few months ago, I got an email from an author in our space. They write some of our ethics books. So it's kind of a big deal for the budding BCBA. They're revising, coming out with a new edition. And they said, hey, we saw your graphic on this specific topic. Would you mind if we sent over, some legislation that we could use that representation in our book? And so just because we use the idea of an OER, that's what that was, that 30 days or however many letters, 26, there we go, 26, days.
We don't have to know the alphabet to pass our test.
That's true. Yeah, that's also the beauty of it, is English is obviously not my strong suit. But we got to create these really cool prompts for people. And then someone noticed it that has, again, the OER thing. It was out there, and someone with more influence, as Maggie said, opening a door, saw it, and they're like, hey, can we use this as an example? Yeah, please. Not only is it cool for recognition for yourself and that reinforcing value, but it's also cool from an intrinsic perspective, because then we get to push forward this idea to new people coming in saying, oh, wow, they went on, they have an Instagram handle and did these things. Maybe we can do that too.
And now a book author is asking them to incorporate their example that's more representative and inclusive than the one they came up with.
Right. It's evolutionary.
Mic drop.
Hang on.
That's OER collaboration.
There's the drop.
Right there.
Yeah, that's it. So just try. And I didn't catch, be flexible. I think that was Cody's and Lauren's put together. Be flexible and just try. And I'll shut up.
I just want to say thank you guys so much, not only for being part of my collaboration, but being so willing to go out there and take these values you learned as LU students into the world and into a field that I am really passionate about, and do more than I could have ever imagined when we started working together. So this has been really cool. I hope you all have continued success and tell me about it. That's part of the wonderful continuing part of OER too. Nancy, were there any questions that we can answer in the next 7 minutes? I think we have 7 minutes, 6 minutes.
We got 7 minutes. Okay, everyone. So no one sent me any questions, which is totally fine. But this is your moment, people of Lindenwood. Do you guys have any questions? Would you like to ask our panelists, our lovely guests, any information, any things you're curious about? This was just so fun to hear all of your stories. I agree with Gabriella that it is very inspirational. It was so fabulous to hear.
And as long as Dr. Scheffler's okay with it, I'll throw myself out there and I'll reel in whichever students feel like supporting me. If anybody has just a class or an idea and they want to make it into an OEP project, or they want to help brainstorm about how they could maybe make that something that's something their students could take beyond graduation, feel free to shoot me a message and we'll try to do our best. But I think we've got some good ideas. I'd love to have us Nancy, oh my gosh, could we think about having a brainstorm of just ideas of how to do this, bullet points of different ways to incorporate OER projects? Because that'd be cool too.
Yeah, you go for it, Maggie. You're doing a great job. This is great. This is great. It distinguishes the college for all the efforts you've made, and others. We really appreciate it.
It's really all our students. And I think that's a cool thing Nancy and Leah and Liz have really helped me do too, is I wouldn't be able to even support these kind of projects without the resources that Lindenwood has given us to do this. We have a digital commons. We've got faculty select. We've got, tools and grants and projects that can make this something that we could really see spread as as a movement. And I didn't get to have my question of, you know, how do you think this will disrupt higher ed forever? But I think that's something we could leave that with, is how do you think this is going to disrupt higher ed forever? And I think this is a way we can adapt to what's coming next and still make our students go out there and do the kind of things Lauren and Clint and Kodi are doing. So thanks for letting me share. And thanks everybody who's here, been part of my support too. So thank you guys.
And Maggie has my contact information. If anybody did come up with a specific question, you can definitely shoot it to me in an email, and you can reach me through Maggie. So feel free to reach out.
And I just wanted to say really quick, thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Kodi. And thank you, Clint, for your time today. So great and so informational. I really, really appreciate your time. We all do.
Thanks for letting us share on a holiday, and thanks for joining us.
I also wanted to add too that there's a list of their projects in the creating module in the OER certification under the assignment page. So there's the prompt for the reflection for this event, and then underneath it there's a whole list of the projects that they did with the links and the behavioral analysis disciplines textbook that they mentioned. That's in Digital Commons. So that is where that one lives.
And we've got a couple other things coming up there too. So we're super excited to keep sharing and just thanks. This was super fun. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.